Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmas, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Bokondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information, history, talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia, from education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
And I am Anthony Sied. A pleasant welcome to Focus on Liberia, where, as you know, we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Today is our program, Focus on Liberia Spotlight. The program Spotlight is the one we use to throw the spotlight on something extraordinary, something significant, something meaningful, something that is Liberian and stands out. In today's edition of Focus on Liberia Spotlight, we are throwing the spotlight on Liberian foreign policy and international relations based on a book titled Liberian Foreign Policy and International Relations, an Introductory Reader. We have three outstanding panelists who will help us to discuss this very important issue. And so if you are just joining us again, we can say welcome enough and help us to share the broadcast with somebody. Foreign policy and international relations, right? What does that mean? Well, the good minds are here and they're going to help us provide some understanding so that we can get a deeper understanding of what is the importance of all these things that they have to talk about. Ready and seated to participate in this panel discussion is Dr. Maury Samuworo. He is a Liberian bilingual academic and entrepreneur. Welcome, Dad. How you doing?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so very much. And talking about Dr. Maury Samuworo, he is a Liberian bilingual English and Arabic. He is an entrepreneur. He lectures at the Cotton University Graduate School of Global Affairs and also the AMEU Graduate School and Foreign Policy Institute at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Liberia. He has quite a number of publications. Also here to participate in the discussion is John Yomi Jr. John is a former coordinator and officer in charge at the Foreign Service Institute, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Republic of Liberia, and he is a co-author of the book, The Liberian Foreign Policy and International Relations, an introductory reader. John, welcome. It's good to have you. Unmute yourself there.
Thank you, Mr. C. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
All right. We also have with us another panelist who has joined us on phone, and he is no one else but Dr. Fall. Before I can bring him in, let me introduce him. Dr. Fall is an educator and a publisher. He has published over 20 books, both in academics, nonfiction, and fiction. He lectures at the University of Liberia Graduate School. Dr. Fall has joined us on the phone. Dad, hello there. How you doing? Dr. Fall, can you hear me?
I'm doing great. How are you all doing?
All right. Please elevate your voice a little bit. The audience want to hear from you. I just introduced you. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you all doing?
All right. We're doing
good to be here.
Excellent. It's also good to have you. How ready are you on the panel discussion focusing on the book, The Liberian Foreign Policy and International Relations, an introductory reader? How ready are you? This is your stuff.
Yeah, we're more than ready.
And I understand.
More than ready.
And I understand you co-authored this book as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So folks in cyberspace, again, we want to welcome you to this discussion. This is a panel discussion on Liberian foreign policy and international relations. And the focus here is on a book that is focusing on Liberian foreign policy and international relations. The authors are saying this is an introductory reader to introduce us to Liberian foreign policy and international relations, and diplomacy and history and all will be in there. I am excited about the discussion to learn from these brilliant minds what they have to share with us as Liberians and all citizens of the world to get to know more about Liberia, the role Liberia play in so many areas, especially in the area of foreign policies and international relations. Gentlemen, let's get to it. Let me start with you, John. Tell us, what sparked the interest that led to this book being written? Let's start with that.
Thank you. I would have rather you starting with Dr. Mori or Mr. Ford, but I think it's a pleasure to get this started, and I'm very pleased to be here at this moment. As you have mentioned, I am a part of the focus people every time to elevate the image of the great Republic of Liberia. Whenever I had a chance to have the chance to say this, I like to say the great Republic of Liberia. And that is one of the reasons we have put together pieces of work that will showcase the great history of our country, especially in the areas of diplomacy, foreign policy, and aspects that have to do with the structures and the functions of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the big question is why the book Liberian Foreign Policy and International Relations, an introductory reader. Several reasons, but one of the most important reasons, which I think the other panelists going to talk about, is the gaps this book is poised to fill out. Because in our country, we have very respectable leaders, very acclaimed academics and policy makers, but we have not substantially been able to compile these very important accomplishments of our great country, especially when it comes to how that great country has mastered the art of diplomacy and had led to the establishment of very important civilized patterns of life that have affected the global space. So, as scholars, as policymakers, as academics in the field of diplomacy and foreign policy and international relations by extension, we have put together very important pieces that talked about the formation of our country, the early stages and the different eras of our foreign policy, and identifying the new locations we are headed to with some critical analysis that unpack the very beautiful art of diplomacy. So it is a wonderful thing to talk about. We've been on this project for years. It is actually about 20 chapters, more than 300 pages, talking about very interesting and attractive pieces of work that will spotlight our country in different spheres, from layers, from the sub-regional focus points to the regional focus point to the continental as well as global points. So you can think all things Liberia that have to do with diplomacy, foreign policy, international relations, all together, kicked together to expand and actually focus the light on this great Republic of Liberia. Several things to talk about, but as an introduction, I thought it was important to lay these premises, and I will have the chance to refer back to you and giving it to the other panelists. And I can show the audience, and we can show the audience that it's going to be a wonderful discussion tonight about a great country. I can't wait to have your questions come in, the comments. And as usual, it's a pleasure to really give you some of those very important details about Liberia. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much. Let me bring you in, Dr. Murray. You heard John there. So, what is the goal of this book? Why this book? Why is this book so important for people to know about it? And not just the name of the book, but what's in the book?
Okay, Mr. Say, thank you so much for hosting us here today to exercise one of our nationalistic duty. As an academic, I think it is my obligation, as well as an obligation of any, educator, to deep dive into challenges, prospects, and achievement of our nation. Okay, in order to do that, it is prudent enough to put some pieces of information as well as to compare some of these critical information so that the country will be guided on the right trajectory. So any nation may have two major policies. We have what is known as a domestic or national policy, and we have also what is known as foreign policy or the external policy. These two policies are intertwined, interconnected, and interrelated, because no nation will be able to advance and implement as well as realize its development and economic prosperity alone. You have to work with other countries. You have to work with other actors of international relations, such as public international organizations, multinational cooperation, as well as international humanitarian organizations. So the foreign policy is the key to realize and achieve national development program. Let me give you a practical example. When we came from Civil War, 2003, 2005, we've had several national development programs. We had poverty reduction, the poverty reduction strategy. We had Agenda for Transformation. We had the Propo Agenda, and now under the current government, we have the Arrest Agenda. Okay, these programs cannot be realized by our limited fiscal space. We need what is known as economic diplomacy. For instance, the Arrest Agenda will cost the Liberian government a little over $8 billion United States dollars. Where can we find this money? When can we get this money? We don't have that money in Liberia. So based on our international connections, based on the realization of our foreign policy objectives, we'll be able to raise and talk to our partners, development partners, diplomatic friends around the world in order to make this domestic policy, in order to make this national development agenda a reality. So this book by our distinguished authors, Mr. Yomi and Mr. Ford, the book will be a critical guardians for the executors of our foreign policy objectives. And also it will be also a very important academic document for students of international relations, students of foreign service department at our various universities. And also the book will be like a masterpiece for those who want to understand what Liberia had offered, okay, to the world. Liberia is a founding member, as we discussed, of the League of Nations. Liberia is the founding member of the United Nations. Liberia is a founding member of the ECOWAS, the Mano River Union, the Organization of African Unity now, the African Union. These important geopolitical institutions were established by the involvement of this great nation. But the question is, what is the reflection? What is the dividend that we've had over the years, despite our involvement, our historical involvement in global geopolitics and international relations? So the book is very key, is very paramount, very important, and very significant for development programs of our country.
Thank you so very much. Let me bring in Mr. Ford now. And Dr. Ford, to your credit, you have about 20 books that you have authored. Now you are a co-author to a book titled Liberian Foreign Policy and International Relations. It's like I've not read any of your previous work except for this one. So my question is, why the focus is on Liberian foreign policy and international relations now? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear my question, or do you want me to restate it?
You said
I said you have a lot of books to your name, but this time the focus of this one is on Liberian foreign policy and international relations. Why the focus is on foreign policy and international relations of Liberia? Folks, we want you to bear with us. The connection is not good. The phone line is connected.
International relations comes to Liberia. That gap, that silence in the Liberian literature or in international relations when it comes to Liberia is one of the key things. That's when you see the time. We were not only trying to address those gaps, but we're trying to make key arguments that need to be made that way overdue. So this book is like doing too many things all at once. It's trying to fill in the gaps. It's trying to inform. It's trying to educate. It's trying to argue. It's actually arguing certain major things about Liberia. So speaking about Liberian foreign policy, as far as I can recall, there's no comprehensive book written on Liberian foreign policy, comprehensively written about Liberian foreign policy. So we try to do that, at least as a basis, set this foundation where we can speak of Liberian foreign policy. What is Liberia's foreign policy? Like situate herself internationally. What has been the situation? What is? And even to some extent, slightly, what will that be? So yeah, those are some of the things we considered in the why we spoke on Liberian foreign policy.
So you have researched, you have documented, you have written information of significance to Liberian foreign policy, diplomacy, international relations. Just by doing that.
We talk, this book is about, hello?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I was saying that this book is about 15 years since this project started. So it's not a one-day thing. This project started from us way back as 2010. So it's a work of labor. We've been finding this information in small pieces and putting them together from like John was saying, about 300 plus pages. When we add the appendix to this book, it goes up to 500 pages. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and we didn't even put them all in the book because if you're going to cover the history, the foreign policy history of Liberia from 1847, that's a lot of material you need to get in there. And we had to do a lot of research, a lot of work. I mean, and then a lot of decisions on what goes in and what doesn't go in, which is one of the reasons why we have it as an introductory reader. Because comprehensively, if we're going to put just a basis of almost everything we found in there, then wouldn't be it to be more than 1,000 plus pages, and we don't want that. So we pick up key issues and made an introductory reader so that we can put the other information in consecutively.
So where are the places you had to go to gather research materials before writing this book? Dr. Ford, that's for you. Oh, his line.
Mostly we focus on access to university libraries, and French and the thing about finding Liberian history, don't find a whole document. Sometimes you find 2-3 lines somewhere. Just find 2-3 lines.
Well, the connection with the phone tool is also a problem. I think we have to make a decision to bring in Dr. Ford sometime in the future when we shall have a better connection. So I think we have to leave him. I will communicate with him for us to plan that way. Yeah, so John, let me come to you and you can pick up the question there. This is a thorough research that you've done. I heard from him, you've been working on this thing for years. I want to know the places you have to go, the kind of documentations you have to go through and read before compiling this book.
Yes, that's a very, very interesting question. And many of the people we've spoken to have also expressed their curiosity as to where did we get it from, and how have we been going with that huge volume. So if I may give you a little background, Mr. Ford and myself worked on my first book, Liberia in the Colorful World of Diplomacy, and I had the pleasure to have also been situated at the First Line Ministry, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that was able to give me the opportunity to work with some of the the most reverend people within the space of diplomacy. So I had the pleasure to understand that there were certain advances that were made, especially when it comes to Liberian foreign policy and diplomacy. So, having had several conversations, attending workshops, attending seminars, I could realize that there were several great minds who I could refer to as reservoir of our Liberian foreign policy. But we did not have the understanding of where most of what they have had spoken to really, pull out when we needed them. So we believed at a point in time that moving forward as the generation faded away, there would be limited, sources to really account for that. So we started out having interviews. We started out going into memoirs because there are diplomatic pouches that they have at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that will reveal to you some of those joint communicate. I mean, joint communicate is more like counterparts or two counterparts going together to identify ways that they can foster partnership, whether it's going to be on trade, it's going to be on regional security, it's going to be on, say, foreign policy, solidarity in support of certain major advances in their foreign policy interests, shared interests, and vital interests, if I may say. So, with all of those documents, it started to stimulate our curiosity to say, how much can we go into these to compare relevant historical facts that may likely not be available in the public space. But if we didn't do this, it means that we're going to be losing important part of our history. So just to go directly to that question, we were able to interview from the method of authority, that is to mean people who are very, very experienced in the field. We were able to interview ministers, we were able to interview ambassadors, we were also able to interview people who have made important representations for Liberia, either as special envoys or as people who have been able to represent Liberia in the foreign service. So there's a huge compilation of materials that we gather from those people through structured interviews and questionnaires. And after that, we're also able to go through the archival method of going through old documents and other previous publications about Liberia in the field of diplomacy and foreign policy. So we were able to, over the years, use the MIST method to make sure that we can use different styles to gather important information. And that has been very, very helpful. I can point to some of the names that we talked to. Ambassador George W. Wallace, who's like the walking encyclopedia of our country, been in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Service for more than 48, 49 years counting. And we were able to talk to one of the very, very simple but very pragmatic and effective former foreign minister, Captain, and several other people I can talk about. So we structured it in the way that we did questionnaires, we did interviews, and why in the US, the aspect of this book that has to do with the US-Liberian relationship, we're able to talk to Peace Corps volunteers, we were able to talk to professors who have had significant research history when it comes to Liberian history with the United States of America. So it has been a very structured pattern. It has been an academically guided and conventional style that we've used to gather all of this information. So it has been really a long, long time coming. And at this point, we can only breathe out to say we've accomplished something very great for our country that required several interventions. And I want to say thanks to all of our supporters, all of our respondents, and all of those who were able to provide the pieces of information that have brought together this very useful piece of document.
All right.
Hello?
Yeah. We are connected now and stay on the phone. I will get back to you, but let me talk to you first, and then I will come to Maurice. You are on the phone, and you've seen a lot of data there, and I know data being harmonized, they will say, right? So the information in this book, what is it meant? I want to know, this is a lot of information. What do you want this information to achieve? That afford? because Liberians and other foreign nationals, friends of Liberia, will have interest definitely in the information talking about foreign policy, international relations, diplomacy, relationship with the U.S., Liberia role, Pan-Africanism, all that. So someone feeling reading the kind of information, what is the goal there? Why you want the information to achieve? Or what are you trying to achieve with this information, to put it right?
So we targeted several different audiences. For Liberians, it's going to be partly historical in nature. It's also going to be educational, informative. It's going to be a preparation. I mean, for the foreign service, those interested in the foreign service, international relations, those in terms of history. So those are different audiences. For the international community, some of them can share all of that. But primarily, we are looking at raising arguments that resituate Liberia. Liberia has been situated or not situated on the international landscape in manners that are either ranging from silent to negative. For example, in African liberation movements, you would hear Nkrumah and you'd hear Biko, you'd hear Diop, you hear all those great names. You don't hear Tubman. When our argument is Tubman was the father of the African liberation movement, I mean, in terms of from 1940 coming onwards to the 70s, our greatest argument is that from that period of time, nobody fought harder for the African liberation movement than Tubman did. It shows off in the fact that Liberia was actually tasked with creating all of these regional bodies, the AU, which is AU now, the OAU, the ECOWAS, the MR, let's forget about MRU yet. So it was the Liberian contribution to this. When Ghana gained her independence, it was the Liberian team that was sent over there to help them structure in their country. And that team went to almost every other African country that gained independence after Ghana, or a variation of that team. So our argument primarily is that we want to resituate Liberia. We want to create these arguments so that people can have a discussion around it. So yes, you read all of these things. What do we want? We want you to start talking about this. I mean, they will be critical. Now want to agree with some of this because you don't know. Some people will want to argue with, like, how come we didn't know all of these things? So yeah, we're stirring up argument and discussion around issues, but at the end of the day, challenge to resituate Liberia where she was once situated before. So if you were to ask me primarily what we want for our international audiences, that would be that.
All right, thank you. Let me follow on that. So I am a Liberian citizen. I've read now. I know that my nation play a significant role in Pan-Africanism, for example, in diplomacy, establishing the United Nations, regional bodies in West Africa. I have read this thing. I'm like, wow, my country was outstanding then. So my further question on that is, what does it do for me? What does it do for Liberia? How does it contribute in any way to Liberians and the nation as a whole just by knowing that information? That's what I want to get for. I need more of that.
That's empowerment. That information gives you empowerment. It gives you national dignity. It gives you an identity. It gives you pride. Those are some of the things it can give you as a Liberian. It could be motivational for others. A lot of us know that Liberia was founding member of the UN and we created AU. How many of us know that it was a team of Ernest Eastman and Rudolph Grimes and those around, Siri Bright, those people that were put on a team and flew all around Africa. How many of us know that those people from Africa trying to get countries to come on board? How many of us know that Liberia was so powerful enough that Tubman didn't have to go anywhere, he just had to send emissaries? How many of us know that ADB, we hear that ADB is a brainchild. How many of us know that it was actually drawn up right here? How many of us know that it was the Liberian delegation that crafted out the charter for the ECOWAS, crafted the charter and presented the charter. Liberia was the one tasked with doing that. So there are a lot of things we've done because we've been made to not know or to not believe that we've been in a conflicted period for so many years. The news coming out of Liberia isn't encouraging for so many people, to the extent that we think that nothing good can come out of us. So a lot of people don't feel there's a need to fight for anything. But when you do know that Liberia did all of these things, then you begin to start to think, the younger people begin to think, but if my country could do all of that, it's not about pride. How can I do it? It makes you strive for a lot more. So yeah, African liberation was a difficult thing. I mean, you heard about the Casablanca and the Monrovia groups, but in the end, why did the Monrovia group? So everything you know about African Union, the AU today, is because of it was Tottenham's philosophy. It's interesting that Tottenham's philosophy was picked up many years by Mandela and Mbeki and Gaddafi. So many years later, everything you know, so everything that happens on the continent right now in terms of African cooperation and unity is what Tottenham wanted. It's the Liberian blueprint. But Liberia isn't given credit for that. Liberia isn't. Nkrumah, they didn't want this kind of African unity. The other group didn't want this kind of African unity. They wanted a United States of Africa. We would have had a one-country state and with all of us underneath them. That's not what we wanted. So how is it Africa is shifted in a geopolitical manner that was designed by Liberia, and we don't get credit for that? Why is it on the African Union mirror, you have all of those people, but then that one is, it's basically, so those are some of the things that you should think of as a Liberian. What does this book mean for me? It's more than just history. It's more than just motivation. It's more than just an argument that we did all of these things, for old time's sake. It is a clarion call for every Liberian who gets to read this book to know that there's a lot more we need to do. If our ancestors could do, then that means we aren't doing anything right now. We should do far more than this because we can't do less than what they did. So it pushes us on a state into a state where we fight for more and to do bigger and better things.
Thank you. And let me come to you, Maury. And we're talking about different audiences here that they're both targeting, for specific reasons. And Dr. Fall couldn't put it right. It's not only for motivation, it's for education and to inspire us as a people to know, what we have achieved as a nation before. And then knowing that, we know that we have the capacity to even do more because the world has advanced now. But if we don't know, we think that we have not done anything great before. My specific question to you is political leaders in our country and also educators, how can they make use of this book, the information in this book, to establish Liberia? How can they do that?
Okay, I think this is a very important question, Mr. C. As you rightly said, we have a wide variety of our viewers and listeners. Not everybody comes from the background of international relations, international law, or international studies. So I think it is prudent to underscore and conceptualize some keywords so that our viewers will clearly understand what we are discussing here today. The book written by my distinguished fellows and brothers is all about Liberia's foreign policy and international relations. Then foreign policy is the external strategic, objectives of any nation. Okay, as I said earlier, you have a domestic policy and you have external or foreign policy. Any nation has a specific objective to be achieved through its interaction with other countries and other actors of international relations, such as public international organizations, multilateral institutions, and multilateral cooperation. That's the first keyword of the book. The second keyword of the book is international relations. International relations as a discipline, as an academic discipline, is all about a theoretical and conceptual understanding of international affairs. Okay, we have international law, we have international relations, we have international economic relations. International law is the judicial or legal component of national studies. International relations is a political component of international study. while international economic relations is a financial component of international relations. Our today's discussion focuses on foreign policy. That's what is the Liberia's objective in interacting with the United States of America? What is the Liberian objective in interacting with the European Union, with the African nations, with the Middle East, with Far East, China, and the BRICS countries? What are our objectives? And international relations, what are those political ideologies that Liberia adapt in order to achieve our foreign policy? So I think to underscore these keywords, we smoothen our discussion and we make it clearer for our audience and our viewers to clearly understand what we are talking about here today. To answer your question, Liberia has been a founding member for a lot of those international institutions, starting from the League of Nations after the World War I, the United Nations after the World War II, the Organization of African Unity now, the African Union, the Mano River Union, the ECOWAS. Okay. Perhaps we may critically say that we have been an important component of putting these organizations together, but the impact is not reflective on our social, economic, and political development domestically. Yes, relatively, we have been lacking behind. But being a member or being a founding member of these institutions have helped us a lot. We came from 2003 civil war, okay? We had close to 20,000 peacekeeping operations in Liberia, okay? The largest United Nations peacekeeping operation in the world, okay? That was done because what we have played in the international geopolitics, okay? In the early 1990s, the ECOMOS, okay? And other military groupings that came into our aid in order to control the civil war. Okay, from Monrovia to Ganta, roughly 240 kilometers, okay? That road was paved after the civil war by our international partners. These are some of tangible dividends that we have received because of our involvement, because of the smart and pragmatic foreign policy that we have. But can we say that it is enough? No, we have to do a lot, and there are a lot to be done. But Liberia's involvement into international politics, establishment of those institutions, having open door policy with other countries, with the United States of America, our traditional ally, with the Chinese, with the Japanese, with the Middle Eastern countries, have helped this country a lot. So this book is highlighting some of these historical achievements. It's also highlighting current challenges. It's also highlighting the prospects that our foreign policy implementation, our foreign policy execution might bring to our country in terms of national development, economic prosperity for everybody in this country. So the book is very key and is very important.
So, John, if someone listening to us is curious to get a little gist of the book, what all is covered in this book, as concisely as you can, to really have the person develop interest to know what grounds, have you been able to cover in this book of importance to Liberia's role in the world?
I was actually looking forward to this question, but I didn't want me to be the one to answer because it's going to be a difficult piece of work to do in the short space of time. But I would try as much as possible to do that. So one of the first things the book attempts to identify or to answer is to provide the structure and context of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, more than anything else, is the face, is the gateway, is the entrance, is the connecting point to the rest of the world. So the way in which we can be able to identify the structures and the functions of their Ministry of Foreign Affairs is really important. Like Mr. Ford and Dr. Mori actually explained earlier on, we have new people who are interested in foreign service. We have people who are practicing and at an emerging level. We need to understand what is the structure of the ministry and how those structures go together to actually make sure the mechanisms of the ministry can be able to achieve the foreign policy objectives of the country that is actually tied to our domestic policy. So now it is something very important to inform practical, say, people within the field. So now, if, for example, you have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you have the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs in different capacities, you have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is actually, he or she is the Dean of the Cabinet, and have four major deputies. You have the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, who's actually in the position to preside over all of our embassies, our foreign missions and consulate. And we have the Deputy Minister for Administration, who is actually the person that runs the daily activities and the logistics of the ministry. And we also have the Deputy Minister for Legal Affairs, who is responsible to advise the minister and by extension the president on treaty processes, on activities that have to do with acquisition of land spaces outside of Liberia. And we also have the Deputy Minister for International and Regional Cooperation. Coming down the line, our various assistant ministers, they are the Chief of Protocol of the Republic of Liberia, and how to understand the differences between the Chief of Protocol of the Republic of Liberia and by extension to understand that of the Chief of Protocol of the Executive Mansion. So all of those very critical thin lines that are between the structure and function of government functionaries are put into the first chapter of the book, situating, that particular position that you can understand that to move forward, achieving our foreign policy objectives, our foreign policy goals, with all of the complexities we face within our new world order today, we must be aware that first of all, people should know who is responsible for what and how the coordination of those pieces will make sure that we can achieve the goals and objectives. Because the world is not about you, it's moving forward. It's about competing priorities. So if they didn't understand, first of all, what is that structure and what is the responsibility, or what are those responsibilities of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, by just the foundational piece, you've missed out. So this book provides that strong foundation of why we should even have a foreign ministry, what is composed of the foreign ministry, and how can the foreign ministry make sure that they can champion the cause of the Republic of Liberia. This is the key word of vital interest, and how the vital interest can be achieved. So anyone interested in knowing about Liberia, the window, the space, the entrance is knowing that particular piece of the book that talks about the structure and the functions of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we lay it out in the way that it connects to theories in our practice. They are grounded theories in international relations. You talk about realism, you talk about the English school, you talk about liberalism, and how these theories provide, the actual practical realities of engaging. Take, for example, liberal tenets will talk about international cooperation. How can we relate to other countries for our various interests to be achieved, and how you can master the art of doing it. They are by themselves, you are by yourself, but at a particular nexus, we all make sure that we achieve and move forward. Realism is about power. Today, Mr. Chung gets up and says that we are not doing this because of this. Certain countries will not do that, but because of the military might, because of the population, because of the economic might, to further explain, they can make certain decisions, and at the end of the day, those of whom who depend on aids, those of whom who depend on the trade exchanges, we have to listen to them because they are using their power, authority, and that currency in international relations as a big power. So understanding all of those things will make you to know how to engage. If you engage with China, for example, what are those foreign policy interests of China? If you're engaging with the neighbors, what are those regional security implications you have to understand as a diplomat or as a foreign service person? So the book clearly lays out the linkages of theories and practices and how you can advance those, major tenets of international relations to achieve. I mean, I keep saying it, and like Dr. Ford has said, and Dr. Murray has said, it is at the end of the day achieving your foreign policy agenda and linked to your national interest, which is the domestic policies, making sure that if we are going to Paris to have a conference, we are going to DC for the conference, at the end of the day, those in San Nicolas should be able to have some new roles. Those in Bokonjile should be able to have some new schools. Those in Monrovia should be able to have some sanitation issues addressed. It's about the population linking to the rest of the world done in a conventional way, because there are patterns. There are ways you're going to engage if you went to the spring meeting in DC. There are ways you're going to engage issues if you went to ECOWAS. So this book has put together all of those, major things from the beginning. But more than anything else, it compiles very important historical pieces. You ask the question, foreign relations, diplomacy, protocol, and etiquette is about prestige, it's about morale. You need to project your value, your significance. And without understanding the historical background of that, it is almost impossible to know where you are headed. So this book also compiles important information about our identification with the establishment of important international organizations. And more than anything else, the way we've related to countries like the big power, the United States of America, from the foundational stage is in the chapter. How have we been able to also deal with the USSR, Russia in many different stages, China, and within our own African continent, talking about how very instrumental we were in bringing to close the apartheid. And now South Africa is one of the biggest power on the African continent. Our role in also bringing the cessation, the Biafran War, and how Nigeria is a big power. So all of those things are carved in different chapters. And at the end of the day, our major goal is to remind people, especially those of whom who were born in the 90s, in the early 2000s, who only hear about civil war, Ebola, coronavirus, but have not been able to understand like one of the tallest structures in Africa, and that tallest structure was the Omega Tower. And it was a very, very important navigational tool for the U.S. naval forces, and how it was very helpful in making sure U.S. was able to conquer some of the great wars in Europe. How much can you think of that? That's a proud moment. How can we talk about how Firestone as a company was able to finance many of the, battles that were won on the European soil, because we were able to help enhance the economic activities of the United States of America. So if I'm discussing that with, say, a U.S. counterpart, or someone who doesn't know about Liberia, but I've only heard about the machine guns and child soldier warfare and so forth, it brings a different mindset about the country, and it positions you in the way that respect is built, and in diplomacy is about respectability. You need to provide that solid foundation, first of all, that you should give a reason for discussion. So all of those are put into the book. Plenty of things to talk about, but just, those lovely things to start upon. I think you're muted, Mr. CA.
Thank you, John. I was just saying thank you for providing that very tasty piece of diplomacy, especially with the emphasis on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now that builds the curiosity of anybody to say, look, I have to read the book because we have foreign affairs. Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I mean, what does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs do? Not many of us will know, but with what you just provided, somebody will want to grab this book and get that knowledge. Dr. Fall is on the line. Let me come back to you. Dr. Fall, we want to know what are being captured in this book. John has provided some of it, and I need some from you. His emphasis was on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a role, as the institution or agency of government responsible to handle liberal foreign affairs. All right. I want to come to you now.
Yeah.
What else do we have in this book for which a Liberian or any national, for that matter, should read this book to know about Liberia as concisely as you can?
Okay, so for example, we addressed like the First World during the book, the World Wars 1 and 2. Now, most people don't know that they were engaged in the World War. Interestingly, we spoke about how Liberia navigated. And one key argument we've made in this book from chapter 1 to 20 is the fact that Liberia has skilled diplomats to be able to survive in a world that was completely racist. Now, imagine a world where only black country was Haiti then. Look at Haiti today. Look at Liberia. Look at the similarities. We are both almost failed states. The world was a white world. Africans or blacks were not considered human beings. In fact, in many countries of this country, we are considered 1/8 of a human being. That means we were even less than the typical animals. So it didn't treat us with that respect. There were so many anthropological theories or other things, social theories that treated Africans less than humans. And then you have an African country that is coming up, or a country on the continent of Africa, and saying they want to represent themselves. This in itself creates a problem. Because if you aren't considered my equal, how can you be represented in my court? One of the rules of engagement, when I said a counsel or a diplomat in the court, that person is treated with the full courtesy. They represent my interests and they get invites and they get full treatment. So if Liberia was to send an ambassador to the court of St. James, that means the queen or the king at the time would have had to find a room in the palace for the king, for the ambassador to stay.
Dr. Fall?
Then that would have been a problem.
Dr. Fall,
yeah.
In the book, you make an argument.
Yes.
I don't know if the best way to put it. You said that Liberian leaders in the past, they mastered the craft of diplomacy and international relations. And that is how they were able to navigate between all the complexity of the war at the time to have sustained this nation's standing. So for someone who may not have an idea what you're talking about, can you list few of the complexities these Liberian leaders in the past you consider who have mastered the craft of diplomacy, have to go through to sustain this nation, Liberia?
I'll give you two quick examples. First, World War I. Germany was Liberia's biggest trading partner. So Liberia bought and exported more to Germany, not just imported, exported more to Germany than any other country in the world. And Germany and the rest of the world goes to war. Liberia now is in a difficult position because she's carved out of America, and America and other countries are going to war with Germany. Liberia, using her field diplomacy, declared neutrality in the war, claiming that this was on the European continent and she had no part to play in the war. That was one of the places where they had to realize that I couldn't fight. You can the hand that feeds you, right? You can buy the hand that feeds you. So Liberia couldn't just get into the war with Germany at the time, but she couldn't deny the fact that America and the UK and those other powerful nations needed the support of the one country again on the African continent. So she declared neutrality for almost all of the 4 years of the war. Under intense and immense pressure, Liberia had to withstand that pressure from the UK. There was embargo placed on Liberia and all. Those are the things people don't know. So the UK, the British were the first to put an embargo on Liberian ships and Liberian goods, claiming that since Liberia wasn't fighting the war or being equal to them, that means just aiding the enemy. The Germans still had at the time the French people was not even with the French, it was in German control. So those are all issues that Liberia. How could you keep the German soldiers here running the French, the cable at the time, and they were at war with the Americans in others here. So that's one example. The next one is when the League of Nations came out. At the League of Nations, the forum was just created when Leader Trump went to the League of Nations. He wasn't even allowed in the assembly at the time because it was a difficult thing. There were all white people, and then this black man was there. When Dennis went to the Bretton Woods Company formation, he was put on the edge of the picture to take the photo. When King went to America because he was invited, when he went to America, when he went to speak at the chambers of the Senate, there's no recording of that. There were many senators from the South that walked out of the chambers. There's actual transcript to that because they sort of insulted our black men who entered the chamber of the Senate. So those are all difficult issues to do. Liberia had to work around these technical issues. The Ivy Brooks were put out of a restaurant in the UK, in the United States. She was representing as well as a diplomat. But they kicked her out of the restaurant because of her color. She walked through the front doors and she was put to excuse the place. And then the government had to go to the back channels and insist that you can't keep my diplomat that way. So, and then a public apology was rendered in the newspaper. So Liberia has to use skilled diplomacy to navigate a racist world in order to survive. So it was more than just a country that was then representing her race. And you couldn't fight the system all the time. You have to navigate around the system to pacify the system. The last example I'll give you was there are several examples where when the British wanted to take photos of the Liberian land, Liberia had to run to the US, or when the French wanted to do that, she went to the British.
Thank you.
Due to the rivalry between Britain and France, Liberia kept most of her land through diplomacy. So when she couldn't fight the French, she went to the British and told them this, and then the British came to Liberia's aid. So it was a kind of skilled diplomacy. A key argument in this book that
Thank you.
our diplomats were so skilled, they understood it.
Are you there, Dadafo?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much. This book, has a lot in it that we really need to read and know about. And I'm just thinking, if every student, every educator, every leader in Liberia can pick up this book and read, we will really see ourselves differently. And I think we will act differently. I think that is one sense I'm getting from this book as I continue to read it. Therefore, thank you there. Let me come to you, Dada Murray. Yeah. So the other day, there was this debate about this Security Council non-permanent seat, and giving Liberia's role in the founding of the United Nations, then League of Nations, now the United Nations. And other people, I actually was like, what do we need that for? What is that going to do for us? So help me here. Is that of any significance that we be on the non-permanent seat of the United Nations Security Council?
Thank you for that question. We've had this debate in my classes at the AMU graduate school, cutting the universities, and of course, we have a variety of opinions. People are divided. Some people are of the opinion that even being a member of the United Nations have not given us what we deserved, which I slightly disagree based on what I've said, that we were able to control the civil war in Liberia because of our involvement in those international organizations, okay? And we've received billions of dollars over the years from our development partners. Yes, the question whether those monies were managed by our national government or not, that's another question. But we've received a lot because of our involvement in those international organizations. So the non-permanent member of the Security Council is another debate, and also it talks about the same subject matter. Non-permanent member, you're going to sit with the United States of America, you're going to sit with the Chinese, you're going to sit with France, you're going to sit with the United Kingdom, you're going to sit with Russia and other non-permanent member. Okay, having presenting your case with these powerful nations, and who have been driving the global development programs, the global economy. I think it is going to give a leverage for Liberia to gain a lot, provided if we can play our card well with the big powers at the Security Council. So yes, the answer is we're going to gain a lot. It's not going to be a ceremonial. Yeah, you can see countries like Japan, countries like Germany, countries like Saudi Arabia. All these countries are dreaming and applying every effort to be members of the non-permanent seat, non-permanent to be non-permanent members of the Security Council, despite their economic prosperity, despite their geopolitical significance in their respective region. If these countries can apply every effort to be it, why not Liberia? So this is a golden opportunity for us. It's going to bring political relevance. People are going to know about Liberia once again, because over the last 40 years, so from the 1980s up to 2003 to Ebola to COVID-19, Liberia has been portrayed by international media, by bloggers from that negative perspective. So being a member of the Security Council is going to change the narratives. It's going to shift the paradigm, for us. So is very important and is a key. Despite, yes, we agree. We agree 100%. We agree that over the last almost 200 years, we have not gotten what we deserve, not because of our involvement, because of our mismanagement of the funds, of monies, of the support that we receive domestically. But we can change the narratives with the new mindset, new orientation, by being a member of non-permanent seat of the Security Council to present our case and also to re-image Liberia positively on the global stage. So it's important and it's beneficial for us, Mr. Say.
Thank you. And John, I'm coming to you there. So let's talk about foreign policy. The simple question is, does Liberia have a defined foreign policy? And did you touch on Liberian foreign policy in this book? And if there is, why is it? And has it changed over time or it has been fixed?
Thank you. And before I start up with my quick response, I just wanted to say, how I really enjoyed my dear friend, making reference to the significance of the United Nations Security Council non-permanent seat is very important. And I thought he made a really good emphasis on that. So for foreign policy, like the previous panelists mentioned, is very, very important because it's that thing you have to use. It's like a tool, you have to use it in a very, very, calculative way, time after time. So to your question, Liberian foreign policy have been grounded by principles and values. So originally, we have been guided by a doctrine of non-interference. That is to mean in other national activities outside of our geographical space, to not interfere into politics or other people. That was why for the long time we had a non-alarm movement, and we are one of the champions of that. That has been one of the values of Liberian foreign policy. And one of the guiding principles has been based on liberalism and economic engagement. So the liberalism aspect has to do with cooperation, interactions with other people on a very friendly basis. And there are important values talking about national security. Every nation state is established on various of values tracing to the Westphalian Treaty that talks about having a geographical location, a government, the people, and the ability to interact with the rest of the world. So our foreign policy has been tied around that to make sure that we can be able to interact with the rest of the world. So that particular point that has to do with our engagement with the rest of the world has been on the liberal basis. Someone who asks, since the establishment of Liberia, why have we just maintained, those traditional patterns? It's something that we can revisit. But if you may know, the foreign policy agenda of our country have shifted over time. From the very beginning, one of our major focuses was on the sovereignty of our country, to make sure that we existed. Like we mentioned, the world has been very racist, and when Liberia gained independence, it was that time the respect for Black people was at the very lowest. But how did we manage since 1847 to move on to several decades and more than a century of existence? So it was the foreign policy goal. First of all, we've gained independence. We must make sure to exist as a country, despite the encroachment of our lands from Cote d'Ivoire, from Sierra Leone, through say colonial powers from the Great Britain side, from the French side, but we could exist. And that was a major foreign policy achievement of our country. And like you may know, when Tubman became president, it was a different era globally. Globalization has advanced, transportation and fast movement has actually advanced. Technology was on the rise. So we saw that shift to the open door policy. We saw new infrastructures were being built. We were moving just from state to state traditional diplomacy to a sense of economic diplomacy. So now we saw the aliens regime that mostly focused on something called development diplomacy. And that was the introduction that even led to shifting the curriculum and thought processes at the Foreign Service Institute, so people could be trained to understand regional policy of trade, understanding competing priorities of climate change and how they affect, domestic trade and all of that. So our policy goals have been really shifted and aligned with those. At the moment, I wouldn't say exactly what is the foreign policy agenda, because every presidency will focus on a particular way to align with the rest of the world. But these are the traditional and fundamental basis that will guide and actually prepare the actual movements of foreign policy activities.
And before I can get to Murray here, we hear about the Foreign Policy Institute. A lot of us have heard about it. We don't know what it actually is, and what is the purpose of it, and what does it do. Can you briefly tell us about it? Because one of the things you capture in your book.
Yes. So under the structure and functions of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we identified the Gabriel L. Dennis Foreign Service Institute, and we identified it as one of the major, say, functionaries of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Why? Because now the world has become so contentious, and the trends of foreign policy and international relations by extension have become so complex and compound. So now we need people who will actually understand the rudiments, the actual engaging principles of foreign policy, to be able to conduct the actual foreign policies of the country. So now we have two major kind of foreign service people. Okay, we have career diplomats and we have political appointees. So at the Gabriel L. Dennis Foreign Service Institute, it has the primary responsibility to train people over a particular period to understand, first of all, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and how to conduct themselves when they go out. There are people who are actually educated into, say, international relations, but may not understand the channel and the communication patterns of diplomacy. So at the Foreign Service Institute, we bring together a combination of diplomacy, international relations, protocol, and etiquette to equip foreign service officers to go into the field and to make sure they can be able to acquire the foreign policy objectives of the country. So just to give a historical background, that was established in 1951, and it was actually remodeled on Minister Morning Captain in 2002. That's when it became the Gabriel L. Dennis Foreign Service Institute, named after one of our longest serving Secretary of State. And during the period of 2007 2008, when Her Excellency Odubangi King had received a mandate from Madam Sirleaf to try and train foreign service officers in the way that they could champion development diplomacy, they established a course for 9 months called the training for diplomacy and contemporary international relations. And that was, in fact, that is a postgraduate diploma that is being given to diplomats from that Foreign Service Institute. So Maury is part of that institute. He could say a lot more about that. I was a part of that institute for many, many years, and we were able to also help with the policy analysis and advisory roles at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So it's one of the very important units. Even like talking about the United Nations Security Council right now, these are people that will help to advise from the research background as to what kind of approaches to do. So that is a very, very important unit within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Yeah, mute.
This muting thing. I was just saying, you can comment on that as well if you wish. But the question I have for you, having read the book, are there some historical inaccuracies, some history that out there actually not true? At some point we heard about Mantilla Nippo and all that. It turned out to not be true. Did the book actually bring clarity to some things that probably not accurate and have been out there?
Yeah, no book is perfect. No human's product is perfect. But based on my reading and critical analysis on the book by my distinguished fellows, the authors, I have not seen any historical incorrectness in the book. Yet, there are some views I may disagree.
No, my question is there something that been out there that is not accurate that this book tried to correct that you know of or have read?
Oh, okay, of course. There are a lot. Because, first of all, the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, okay? When I was a kid coming up in the elementary school, junior high, we were told that Liberia was the cause why Africa is not united today. Okay? Liberia, Africa should have been fully united, fully developed like the United States of America. Because of Liberia, Africa failed to have a United States of America. Okay, that has
United
been
States of Africa.
Yeah, United States of Africa. That has been portrayed then, and it has been consumed. Myself, I used to be embarrassed when I heard these historical narratives from my history teachers. Okay, those days. But later on, we came to realize that Topman's decision was timely, because by then, only a few African nations had their independence. Okay, and there was no political infrastructure for the United States of Africa. Okay, that is why we had what is known as the Casablanca Bloc and the Monrovia Bloc. The Casablanca Bloc was more of revolutionary bloc led by the late king of Morocco, the late president of Guinea, Sekou Touré, Kwame Nkrumah, and others. The Morovia bloc was led by late President Topman. Morovia bloc believed that we can have separate African nations with a shared agenda in order to push the African development program and help other African nations to gain the independence. But to tell you that Topman was very smart diplomat in pushing his diplomatic agenda at the global stage, and also to keep the African agenda intact. When the conference was held in Addis Ababa and the vote was conducted, the majority, adopted or approved the Topman's approach. Okay, that shows to you it was not a wrong decision. It was not a wrong suggestion and direction from President Topman. But unfortunately, over the years, in some African countries, I don't want to name, some African countries, it has been incorporated in their curricula that because of Liberia, Africa couldn't have the United States of Africa. So this book may help to correct that historical false narrative about Liberia, because you don't want to travel to participating in an international conference, then somebody, oh, you're from Liberia. Oh, because of Liberia, we don't have United States of Africa. It's not going to, kill you, but it's going to, have a psychological effect on you. So if we have such kind of masterpiece and it is taught at our various tertiary institutions, Cartington, University of Liberia, AMU, Foreign Service Institute, and our people understand why Topman had to take that decision, they'll be able to defend Liberia. Because to defend Liberia politically, it is our responsibility. Now, you travel around the world, civil war. We are not at war anymore. It is our responsibility to correct the narrative. An investor will not come to Liberia as long as he has that mentality that Liberia is not safe. Okay? Likewise, when you go out over there, you will not be able to have a conversation with somebody, intellectually. That person had that historical mindset that Liberia was the cause why Africa did not have the United States of Africa. Yes, it was an option, but back then it was not timely. We had no political infrastructure. Almost 80% of the continent was under, imperialism and colonial control. So that is what Topman suggested, that we had a separate but a shared, collective development and political goal for the African continent. You see, Europe, the European Union has the same model. European Union, very advanced economically, politically, technological wise, yet it is separated. Okay, it is not always good to take an example, a political example from the United States of America, because you have another model that is very successful, the European Union. Okay, Africa will be a very successful continent if we put our development programs together, implement, execute those programs, love our continent, work together to have a shared prosperity. We don't have to adapt the United States model, and we don't have to adapt the European model. We have to develop our own African model that suits our geopolitical, structure. So I think that is why Topman decided to propose the separated yet the united African continent. So that was one of the great contribution by our authors to correct that historical narrative. Before I land, I want to expand on what my good friend John Yumi was discussing. the Liberian foreign policy objectives. Okay, I had an opportunity to ask some of my students, do we have a foreign policy? Some of them said, no, we don't have foreign policy. I was shocked. We don't have foreign policy. That means we don't have a country. Over the last 170 years, now a student is telling me that we don't have foreign policy. That shows to us that we have to re-educate our people. Okay? We have to re-educate our people, and we have to educate ourselves about these foreign policies, because they are very, very important, very, very key. If we don't have foreign policy, we're not able to implement domestic policies. You know, as I said earlier, the arrest agenda will cost us a little over 8 billion United States dollars. We don't have that money. We need to have a tool. We need to have a mechanism. We need to have a vehicle to attract foreign direct investors, and also to inspire and motivate our development partners to help us develop Liberia. No country is an island. Oh, I'm sorry, Morovia. My light is off. Okay. So the Liberian foreign policy over the years, as John was saying, sorry, they'll put the generator on. The Liberian foreign policy over the years, I can say that we had three different or four different foreign policies. Before the Topman era, the policy was concentrated on protecting the national independence. Because we have the British in Sierra Leone, we have the French in La Côte d'Ivoire and Guinea, and they were, striving to expand their territory. Okay, and again, the League of Nations that was established by Liberian involvement once wanted to declare Liberia not capable to be governed by itself. That means the League of Nations wanted to control Liberia. So from 1847 to 1940, from 1847 to 1944, our foreign policy focused on the national independence. From 1944 upward, Topman developed and introduced three different policies: economic development, social development, and political development. Okay, from the Tobos administration to the coup, we had the coup policy. Before, our constitution was on the United States of America. Tobo came in and expanded the Liberians' engagement, including China, the Russians, the Arabs, the European. That is why historians are saying that one of the major political mistakes of President Tobo, he wanted to become a friend of everybody. So, but then Tobo opens door for everybody, for every nation, as long as Liberia is going to achieve something through its external engagement. So the final foreign policy that we have and is still in execution is a development policy, as John was saying. Since we came from civil war, our focus, you ask every Liberian, we want road, we want water and sanitation, we want schools, we want universities, we want hospital, we want job. So now the executors of our foreign policy, they are mainly focusing on development components, because we are secure somehow. I don't think anybody will come and claim Liberia now. Okay, I don't think so. And everybody knows the importance of socio-economic development, political development. Now we are focusing on development diplomacy. Okay, so these are four major stages that we've had since the establishment or since the foundation of this country called Liberia.
Thank you so very much. I would like for us to go on and on and on, but time is our enemy here. But rest assured, we're going to spend time on this book here at Focus on Liberia. We will see if we can discuss the book chapter by chapter because from our reading of this book, the book has done a great deal in educating us about who we are as a people, the role we play as a country, our leaders in the past play, and how it will make us to see ourselves differently and start acting differently. And this book is also for our political leaders. They need to be armed, with the facts, the historical achievements, the diplomatic achievement, the foreign policies of Liberia that were implemented in the past. Our political leaders and students need to know that. Educators need to know that. We all need to pass the information down to everybody. Because when we do, I think we will be thinking the right way to develop our country. So we will spend more time on this book. John, time. So we have to wrap up here. So talk to me. One last thing I want us to talk about. Now that we have this book, is the book out yet? How can someone get a copy if it is out?
So thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we have put every necessary step into making sure we can have a well-written, a well-structured book that presents very important information. So at this point, we are wrapping up and gathering expert opinions to make sure that some of what we've presented can be double checked. We can have new arguments, we can verify, we can validate, and make sure that we put out something that is of international standard and can, raise the value. Because many people say, oh, Liberians will do this, Liberian will do that. My good friend out here, Maury and Ford, we have been very much involved with pursuing excellence. So at this stage, we are concluding the literature of this book, and we're going to have another section on next week, Saturday, at the Fort Cafe to bring together people who have actually been the formulators of our development diplomacy. Because like we talk about former Minister Odubangi King accurately, we talk about Dr. McIntosh, who was at one point in time championing and continuing the establishment that was laid by Minister King. And we talk about former Minister Deputy Minister Elias Shonian, who was at the Foreign Affairs department that was actually engaging with the rest of the world. And we also hoping to have former Minister Marjan Kamar. These are people who were actually at the formative stage and at the implementation stage as well. And hopefully we're going to have Ambassador Banks, Nathaniel Banks, who was in the position to communicate to Washington where everyone wants to communicate. So we're going to have these people, and that could be the final preparation and expert opinion platform that will lead to the publication of this book that we've been actually engaged to for several years. So we are hoping that at the end of this month, our book will be ready on several platforms, including Amazon, Google Reads, Hulu, and Apple Books, everywhere that you can find it, because we have put together something that is of very high quality, and it should be everywhere. We're even going to have ebook or version today. So it is just at that point of conclusion we are, and we thought these kind of conversations are important to communicate with our audiences, and whatever feedback we can have will be reviewed, not automatically go into the book, but making sure it's aligned with research practices. And if we found that important, we're going to include that, like we have started doing several years ago. So we are almost there, and we have the content completed. We're just like polishing and making sure the baby comes out very beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Marie, let's wrap up here. I want you to close on, if we shall have gotten the final product.
Mhm.
Ministry of Education, have you started? Do you know if conversation is being held with Ministry of Education so that they both can be in all our institutions and be taught in schools? Are you looking in that direction as well?
Yes, if we say that the book should be taught our schools, um, is good, but the book is not for every level of education. Okay,
Mhm.
this book, perhaps if you say the Commission of Higher Education, because the book is of that level, tertiary institution.
Mhm.
Except if you propose that we can and we should simplify the book, you know, to the level that our grade students, elementary, junior high school, will be able to understand in that civic manner. Will be able to understand what are the foreign policy objectives of Liberia and what are different, political ideologies that our foreign policy, has. Liberalism, democracy, and and other political ideologies that the foreign policy have. But this book, as it stands, is not suitable for the great schools, because it's the I think the standard is above that. But for university, postgraduate students, and even for researchers and practitioners, diplomats, I think is very important, and I encourage them to acquire the book and to go over it. It's going to add up their knowledge and open up their horizon, and open new doors for our external engagement with our partners and actors in international relations. And
All
again,
right.
before I land, I think
Mhm.
the book is lacking certain components. I think John and his co-authors, they have to consider that. I've not seen anything in that book about digital diplomacy. Digital diplomacy is very key, to portray and represent our image. You have a TikTok, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have YouTube. These platforms, when you go there, you always see negative, things about Liberia. Okay, an investor will not come to Liberia as long as it is portrayed over there that almost 60% of Liberians are on drug. It is part of the responsibility of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, academics like myself, to use the digital platform to positively portray. That is part of we call a digital diplomacy. And finally, diversification in our foreign engagement. Over the years, Liberia's constitution has been the United States of America and Europe. We have given less constitution to the Middle East. We have given less constitution to Southeast Asia. We have given less constitution even to some of our African, countries. Okay, and you can see today, because of the political shifts in the United States of America, you have seen the new direction the U.S. has taken, including Liberia. Okay, so I think we have to diversify our global engagement to include other very important regions in the world in order to achieve our foreign policy objectives. I think these two components are lacking in the book. John, before you finally publish the book, I think even 1 or 2 pages should address these areas to make it more inclusive and comprehensive. So thank you so much.
All right. Excellent suggestion, Dad. So, John, you're going to close us and tell us what next should we expect in the process of completing this great piece of work.
Yeah, I think it's only fair to welcome the comments from my dear friend Dr. Mori. That's the beauty of scholarship. It's very important to have these useful information. I think at some point we mentioned that. I would encourage Mori to, look it up and see how we can improve on that. We talked about it under public diplomacy as a recommendation, under the way to remodel the way we engage with our activities at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Because in every chapter, we talk about the current trends and how these trends can be, refactioned and patterns can be shifted for positive engagement. So I thought that was a very useful comment. And we mentioned that communication, right, is the soul of foreign policy. When communication ceases to exist, it means diplomacy and foreign policy wouldn't exist. So with these, information just provided by Dr. Mori, we thought it would be a really good thing if we can improve or include more of those. And we're really going to take that into serious consideration. So I'm just, grateful that we had such a distinguished person on our panel tonight. I can't thank him any further. He has always been willing to help. And these are the kind of, discussions we want to have. People can come in a very safer way, talk about important things of our country, advance solutions, because it's a call to action. After all of what we've said, what's next? That's why I'm very happy that you asked the question. And thanks to Mr. Ford, he's been very, 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 very available and willing to work, to make sure things happen. And I can say to you, internet is a challenge in the country. So talking about digital, diplomacy is really important to talk about how we can understand the need, to prioritize those very fundamental things. How can you, have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and you struggle with internet connectivity, and there is a, communication that talks about the life and death of people, maybe at the embassy, and you cannot respond appropriately just because you have failed to do that. So it all has to do with the digital, diplomacy, or Dr. Murray talked about. So these are things we want to make sure this book, our book, can present. And it is all about the love of our country. We want to make sure we present it in a way that is realistic, is authentic, and it should provide solution and alternative pathways to making sure that we can have, that once again flourishing, piece of our society. Diplomacy has been that limelight. It has been that soul, of our body as a nation state. So we can stay away from it, but by going to it, we have to be very realistic. We have to do the necessary things to do like we're doing tonight, and making sure that the state actors that are responsible should be trained, they should be understanding, they should be available to have external expertise, and to tap onto people like Maury and several other responsible and knowledgeable people in our country, all for the good of our country. So I want to say thanks to you as we move forward. The expectations for this book should be that it will be published in a matter of few weeks, and we'll have more of these kind of discussions on chapters, and sections of the book, revealing information, providing arguments, and also proffering solutions that will all be for the benefit of our country as we engage into a very competing world order today. So I want to say thanks to all of you, who have been watching, sharing, and no other things could be bigger than going to, acknowledge the acceptance of the Focus on Liberia family, that received this information with a lot of excitement. I've been working behind the scenes, making sure that we can be here tonight. These are the kind of things we call patriotic, involvement into elevating our country. So I just want to say thanks to everyone. So much to say, but at this point, I just want to say thank you. Let's get the real job done. We have work to do. We have so much work to do. Not pointing fingers at people. We've not fun of doing that, but we just want to make sure that people should come alive. They should come willing and available, that we can champion the good cause of our dear country. So I want to say thank you. Let's get the real job done and let love ring. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Dr. Ford. It has been an honor here at Focus on Liberia that you reach out to us to use our media platform to talk about what is indeed a significant piece of book that you are working on, with so much information that we can use for national renewal, national development, trying to look in ourselves in the eyes and try to reestablish ourselves, to redefine ourselves. Our past leader did it in very difficult times and accurately they succeeded. And so we are standing on the shoulder of giants, and there are so many examples historically being documented that we can look forward to build a country. Liberia, truly, if you look at history, has been a great nation. Liberia has had so many successes in the midst of troubling challenges. What we see today is nothing compared to what our past leaders have to endure. And so we are in a good place, but we have to see ourselves that way, and then we'll be able to do it. The song says we are all Liberians. That song is taking us home. We will work with John. This book is an important book. We will plan a series and we'll discuss this book and we'll educate ourselves about our nation's foreign policy, international relation, diplomacy, and history. Don't forget that part also. That one, that's the juicy one I like. The song says we are all Liberians is taking us home. And until we see you again, bye-bye.
Thank you.
We are Liberians.